Now, in this special coverage of what's happening in Russia, inviting two guests, our correspondent Marina Kortunova joining me from Moscow. Also with me is Don DeBar, he's an activist and commentator. Good to have both of you on the show. So Marina, let's begin with you. Give us an update about the latest that's going on there.
Good evening, dear colleagues. So the top leaders of Russia remain in the capital region at their jobs. In the Russian regions, the situation is calm, but in some areas the authorities are canceling mass events. Recruitment centers of Wagner PMC fighters are closing in different cities. In Moscow, Monday, June 26 is declared a non-working day for most residents. The regime of counter-terrorist operation was introduced in Moscow and Voronezh regions, and security measures have been strengthened in Lipetsk, Nizhny Novgorod, Bryansk, Kirov, Kursk, and a number of other regions. So mass events have been cancelled in many Russian regions, including Kaluga, Tver, Kaliningrad, and Tula regions. The authorities urge Russians to remain calm, not to succumb to provocations, and to trust only official sources of information. Russian politicians and public figures condemned the actions of the rebels, stressing that those who deploy weapons against their own should be severely punished. And anti-terrorism operation has been launched in Moscow, and the city's mayor Sergei Sobyanin has announced, describing the ongoing situation as difficult. So fighters of Akhmat, an elite National Guard unit from Russia's Chechnya, have reached Rostov-on-Don. There's verified actually footage circulating online shows. And it is said that multiple armored vehicles and trucks carrying personnel can be seen driving on the outskirts of the city, which has become the hotbed of the insurrection by the Wagner PMC. And there is no exit data on where exactly the PMC is located at the moment. According to rumors, in Serpukhov, locals heard a shooting battle, and in Kashira they saw PMC. So there's just gossip circulating. So mobile reserve units from other regions of Russia were transferred to Moscow in recent hours by military transport aviation. Soldiers are sent by train from St. Petersburg, and in some military units in Moscow and the region, a collection of vacationers has been announced by the end of June 26. Ukrainian information warfare agencies are actively throwing in fakes, trying to discredit Russian armed forces and bring even more confusion. This does not negate the fact that on the ground PMC Wagner enjoys situation support, because the fighters of the Russian armed forces also had the same questions to the leadership of the Russian Ministry of Defense. This, among other things, is due to the rapid advance of PMCs to the capital. So this is the most interesting questions. Where is the column of Wagner column at the moment? By and large, the situation is close to completion. We do not believe in prolonged urban fighting in the capital in case of further escalation of the situation. And according to unverified information, in a couple of hours in Moscow and the region, they should begin to jam mobile communications and the internet. If this happens, the night events in Moscow will remain in many respects a secret, and we will learn about the results of the rebellious Justice March after the completion of this grandiose action. And there are enough questions about the ongoing events. Much is done so deliberately that you seriously feel like the hero of some tricky chess game. So too many troop movements and maneuvers to just suppress the rebellion. So there are lots of questions, lots of interest. Where is the column of Wagner at the moment? Which city? But still, I've just only made fresh updates. I'm reading, checking online, the latest information.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, Don DeBar, given the timing of this, so we had that so-called counteroffensive by Kiev and seemingly didn't get anywhere. Now we have what is President Putin calling a mutiny by mercenaries fighting for Russia. So let's have your assessment and tell us how sensitive the situation is in your opinion.
We have more than that, too. We've discussed before. NATO launched its biggest ever aerial war games last week. And they have 250 aircraft, 10,000 troops from 25 NATO partners added to the deployments that are all along Russia's borders and, in the Baltics and all of that. So NATO has basically been preparing for a war well, for decades. But that, you know, they've essentially deployed. And we also heard, by the way, I was traveling following Kennedy's campaign this past week up in New Hampshire, and I heard from several people where military bases are in different parts of the United States that there was all kinds of activity, and then people leaving, troop transports and equipment leaving to go abroad. So whatever this thing that's going on there, I have a strong suspicion it's coordinate with U.S. military activity, NATO military activity. I think that this is a war that's begun.
So you're talking about direct engagement between NATO and Russia?
I'm talking about, you know, with our friend that is playing Julius Caesar here, thinking that the River Don is the Rubicon, and that he's going to bring his little army into the city of Moscow, like Julius Caesar did into Rome. I believe that he is working in coordination with the United States military. That's my belief. I mean, it's not founded on anything except observation, history, and an understanding of who's got what. Okay. This would be the only route, really, that the U.S. could insert troops into Russia without provoking a response that would be, you know, brutal upon the United States and Europe. And it may well end up being that anyway. But it's different to just turn someone who's already on the ground. And this is a mercenary.
Right. And Don, President Putin has just warned against the West taking advantage of the situation. He's also threatened that, in his words, traitors will not get anywhere. So what do you recommend that Russia do at this point in time?
Well, honestly, I hope that they don't, that you know, the military and the upper government officials don't need my advice. To me, it appears that the thing that's I mean, the most important thing, I think, is for to maintain order. I mean, the purpose of doing this, aside from trying to actually, you know, conduct military activity, terrorist activity, really is what they're doing, is to cause unrest among the population and insecurity. I mean, these are things that they've been trying to do since 2014 and earlier with sanctions. They thought they could collapse the economy that way. These terrorist actions inside Russia's borders, along the Ukrainian border, hitting the bridge in Crimea, the terrorist attack in St. Petersburg, the terrorist attack in Moscow on Dugina. You know, this is all intended to frighten people, make them lose confidence in the government. And then to do that, you have to position someone else that people will feel more comfortable with, which is the idea, to drive them towards your puppet. You know, the situation here is they're already talking about corruption. This is, Prigozhin's talking about, I'm going to settle the corruption problem in Russia. Corruption is, you know, it's a word that is meaningless, basically. Okay? It's non-ideological, it's a generic word, and it is essentially, corruption is something that is evil in the eye of the beholder. And so for him to be talking about corruption while he's been in Ukraine, the most corrupt country on the planet by every measure, and deciding that he needs to take military action against Russia instead of Ukraine, where he was positioned, tells you everything about it. It's a lot of nonsense. This is a military action, a treasonous action against Russia by this particular Russian who's in charge of this operation, and it is obvious from the outside that he's doing it in tandem with the U.S.
Okay, appreciate your thoughts and input. Let me thank my guests. We had our correspondent Marina Kurtanova in Moscow, and also Don DeBar, activist commentator in Austin and New York.